Okay, so as mentioned before, in this video, we are looking at the topic of lock and key theory of hormone action. So that's what I'm going to write on my sheet. So as I'm writing, I'd like you to take notes with me, but also be aware that I'm not actually going to be writing all that much. So when I'm saying something which is worth noting, or I'm describing the diagram, make sure that you pause the video and kind of write that explanation with me in your own words, without me kind of necessarily explicitly writing it down on a piece of paper. But your job is going to be listen to what I'm saying and kind of write your own understanding of what I'm trying to describe to you. So lock and key theory, lock and key theory of hormone action. So my first question is, well, what are hormones, right? And here I'd like you to pause the video for a little while and think of one or two examples, specific examples of hormones you might be able to name. If you're really struggling with that question, then have a quick look on the net and see if you can quickly find one or two examples on there. Okay, so I hope you've come up with some answers for examples of hormones. So maybe some of you came across something like adrenaline, or let's say estrogen, or maybe testosterone, etc., etc. There are lots of different hormones. So just to give you a definition of what hormone is, so hormone, it's a chemical messenger, so chemical messenger produced by endocrine. Sometimes some people say endocrine, that's fine, you know, it depends on how you prefer to pronounce it, by endocrine glands that can affect other cells and tissues in your body. Okay, so this is sort of a technical definition of what hormone is. So it's a chemical messenger, and that chemical messenger travels around your body, and it has ability to affect other cells and tissues in your body. And I hope by now you would have watched my levels of organization video, and so you should be familiar with this term tissues. Okay? Now, endocrine glands. So you have a whole bunch of endocrine glands. They all produce different hormones. Some of them produce just, a couple of hormones. Some of them produce a wide range of hormones. So examples of endocrine glands would be something like, let's say, adrenal gland, which produces hormone called adrenaline, or it could be let's say pituitary gland. Yeah, I'm not going to write it down. So this is examples of adrenal gland. So these examples of endocrine glands. So for example, adrenal gland or pituitary gland. Okay, so pituitary gland, this is a gland which is found in your brain. Right, now the hormones, which is another thing that you must be able to know in order to explain this concept of lock and key. So hormones travel in your body through blood. So they travel through blood. Okay, now this fact creates a bit of an issue, okay, or could potentially create a bit of an issue if nature didn't find a solution for it. So at this point, I'd like you to pause this video for a second and scratch your head and have a little think about why would that fact of hormones traveling through blood, why would that potentially create an issue? And this is an issue which nature had to come up with a solution for. Because otherwise, without that solution, that fact would have caused a bit of a havoc in your body. Okay, so pause the video, have a little bit of a think. I know you might say, well, I don't really know. I don't know much about hormones. That's fine. But this is more of a sort of common sense kind of thing, right? So it's something you can actually work out by just using information I've given you so far, and just a bit of common sense and common knowledge. So hormones travel through blood. Why would that potentially create a problem? And pause the video now and have a little think. Okay, so I hope you didn't just go straight to the rest of the video, but actually paused and thought about it. So the problem is this, right? So hormones travel through blood, right? And that means in turn that hormones can potentially reach every single cell in your body, because blood can reach every single cell in your body. Why is that? Because blood is what delivers raw products like oxygen and nutrients to your cells, and that's what also takes away all the waste products. So if the cell wants to live, and I'm sure, majority of cells in your body want to survive, and unless they're really old and they're just ready to give up the ghost. But most of them rely on blood all of them rely on blood to give them nutrients and then take away waste products. So if you have a cell which does not have blood supply, that means that it's going to die pretty quickly, right? So all the cells have access to blood supply. And what that means in turn is the hormones, as they're traveling around your body, they have potential to come into contact with every single cell in your body, with every single organ, every single cell. So let's take a specific example. Let's think of an example of a hormone called prolactin. And this hormone is produced by a gland, and this is produced by a gland called pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. So here you notice I'm starting to take notes in a very kind of shorthand, if you like. I'm only giving you certain keywords. So it's your job from this point to start writing full sentences, right? So I'm doing it on purpose so that you can then, create your own explanation using my keywords. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of this bit. So prolactin is an example of a hormone produced by pituitary gland, and I hope you remember, I actually mentioned it a few sentences earlier, that pituitary gland is located in your brain. So pituitary gland is going to produce this hormone, prolactin, by the way. Does anybody know what this hormone does? The key is in the name, prolactin. What's lactin? What's lactate? Right? So lactate is to produce milk, right? Lactose, think about that as an example of sugar which you find in milk. So this key word gives you a bit of a clue. So this hormone is actually produced in a female who was just given a birth, and this hormone is supposed to tell her cells in her mammary glands in her breast to start producing milk for the hungry baby. So pituitary gland is going to kick into action just after a woman given birth and start churning out some prolactin. This prolactin is going to go from the brain, from pituitary gland, and start coursing through your bloodstream and go all the way around this person's body. And potentially, as we mentioned before, it can therefore reach every single cell in this body. And do we really want that, right? Do we really want every single cell in this woman's body to start producing milk? You'd probably agree, not a good idea. I mean, I sort of think in horror what it would look like, right? So really, not something that we want. So then the question is, well, how does your body know which cells should be producing milk and should be responding to this message of prolactin and which should not? And this is where our lock and key theory comes into play, right? So again, I'd like you to pause my video for a second and have a kind of a bit of a brainstorm using using these as a bit of a keywords, right, as kind of a bit of a clue, what do you think that lock and key theory means? How would it work to stop every cell in your body responding to this message of, say, prolactin? Okay, so pause the video, have a think about it, try to phrase it in your own way, and then let's see if my explanation matches with your idea. Okay. So, sorry, that was my daughter trying to call, so I'm not going to pause it. I'm just going to switch off my phone for a second. Okay, so here's the answer to that question. So what happens is you have cells in your body which produce hormones. So let's say this is a cell. You remember by now, I hope, that you've got cell membrane and a nucleus, right? So again, going back to levels of organization here. So those cells are going to be producing, let's say, hormone A. So I'm going to show this hormone as a little triangle. So this is going to be hormone A, which is being produced by this particular gland. Let's say you've got another gland, another cell, right? And that produces a different hormone, and I'm going to show it, for example, as a square. So this is hormone B. And then the third cell, which produces another hormone, let's use a little circle for this one. So this is going to be my hormone C. So all these hormones are going to get deposited in your bloodstream. So I'm going to draw your bloodstream as this kind of red river, because we associate red with blood, right? So this is your bloodstream. Okay, so it'll be, capillary or artery, etc. And those hormones are going to be deposited into this bloodstream. So my squares and my triangles and circles, all these hormones are going to start traveling along this bloodstream. Okay, so at some point they're going to come into contact with other cells in your body. And those cells are going to have something called receptors on the surface. Okay, so let me draw another bunch of cells. So these are my gland cells, which are producing those hormones, and these are going to be so-called target cells, which potentially could pick up message of these hormones. So what, as I said, you have on the surface here are structures called receptors. So let's imagine this particular cell have got receptors of that particular shape. So this is a receptor. And my other cell have got another bunch of receptors, but they are different shape. Okay, so let me draw a few of these receptors here. So this is another receptor. Okay? So I hope you are going to guess which cell is going to be responding to which hormone. So let's number them. Let's say this is cell 1, so C1, cell 2, and cell 3. And you can see that my cell 1 is going to have corresponding shape of a receptor to the shape of a triangle. So the hormone A, if it's going to come and try to attach, it will be able to do so. So that's going to be my hormone A. Now, if hormone B, which is a square, will try and do the same, it simply won't be able to attach and activate this receptor. So that hormone is not going to be able to activate and pass on the message it's carrying to the cell A. However, you can also see I've got this other cell, cell 2, which has got the right sort of shape for the hormone B, right? Because it's got this exact right indentation to receive a little square. So these are complementary shape. So I'm going to write this one of these keywords here, complementary shapes. Right? So your hormone and your receptor have to fit into each other. Now, just a couple of comments as I'm explaining that. I have to tell you that the receptors, they are not as massive as I'm showing you here, right? So this is a cell. The receptors in real life are going to be tiny, tiny, tiny. You won't be able to see them under the microscope. But we know that they're there because of how these hormones operate. So that's why it's called theory. We can't sort of directly see it, but from all our data, from a lot of experiments, that's our kind of best understanding of how hormones work. Okay? Now, the second comment I wanted to make is that, the shapes I'm using are fairly simple shapes. So I'm showing you, little triangle, little square, little circle. Now, are these realistic shapes of hormones? Well, actually, probably not. They are not going to be this perfect little square floating about. It's going to be some kind of complex 3D shape, but the point is going to be still the same. The shape of a receptor and the shape of your complex 3D hormone shape, they need to be complementary. So a bit like, a key fitting into a lock, and hence the name lock and key theory. So for the third cell, I'd like you to draw a shape of a receptor which you think is going to be the correct one. Okay? So that's my explanation. So your next job is to read explanations which I gave you in the Word document, and after that I'd like you to close everything down and write your own explanation from scratch, and then we'll have a go at reading a few of these explanations in the next class. Thank you very much.